My wife cheated and my stepdaughter swore it meant nothing, so I filed for divorce, took the house, and left them with nothing but regret. Hello, Reddit I+ here. When I look back now, I can pinpoint the exact moment things began to unravel. It wasn't the night I caught Julia with another man. It was months before, when she first started pulling away. Julia and I had been married for 12 years. When I met her, she was a single mother raising Hannah, who was 10 at the time. Hannah's biological father had disappeared years before, and Julia painted me as the man who had saved them both. And in a way, I suppose I did. I gave them stability, a home, and a future. For years, I poured myself into making sure they never felt abandoned again. I paid for Hannah's private school, extracurriculars, and even set up a college fund for her. I never once treated her like she wasn't mine. She called me dad by choice, not because she was told to. And I'll admit it, that meant everything to me. But by the time Hannah was in her early 20s, Julia had changed. She became secretive, cagey with her phone, and started snapping at me for the smallest things. "Why are you always asking where I'm going?" she would hiss. "I'm not a child. I don't need your permission." It hurt, because I wasn't asking out of control. I was asking out of concern. But she twisted everything to make me feel like I was suffocating her. The night everything came crashing down wasn't planned. I was supposed to be working late, but a meeting was canceled. I pulled into the driveway and immediately noticed another car parked outside. I didn't recognize it, but something in my gut told me everything I needed to know. I unlocked the door as quietly as I could and stepped inside. The house smelled of wine and perfume. I heard laughter coming from the living room, Julia's laughter. A sound I hadn't heard directed at me in months. And there he was, a man I'd never seen before, sitting comfortably on my couch, his arm around my wife. Julia's blouse was unbuttoned, her lipstick smudged. When they realized I was standing there, the room went silent. He scrambled to his feet, muttering something about leaving. Julia didn't even chase him. She just sat there, staring at me with defiance instead of shame. I remember my voice trembling as I asked, "How long?" Her answer, "It doesn't matter." When Hannah came home later that night, I told her what had happened. I expected her to be horrified, maybe even angry at her mother. Instead, she looked at me with cold eyes and said, "It doesn't mean anything. Don't throw away our family over one mistake." One mistake. That's all it was to her. 12 years of loyalty, commitment, and sacrifice, reduced to nothing more than a trivial lapse in judgment. That was the knife in my back. It wasn't just Julia who betrayed me. It was Hannah, too. The girl I raised, the girl I loved as my own, dismissed my pain like it was irrelevant. The divorce. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Julia thought I wouldn't go through with it. She tried everything. Anger, denial, even seduction. At one point, she accused me of being the reason she strayed. "You work too much. You're always tired. What did you expect me to do?" But I wasn't the one who broke our vows, and I wasn't about to let her paint me as the villain. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Julia demanded half the house, half my savings, and even claimed spousal support. But I had been careful. The house was in my name before we married, and most of my finances were kept separate. I presented evidence of her affair, text messages, photos, even footage from the security cameras she didn't know about. The judge wasn't sympathetic to her sob story. In the end, she got nothing. No house, no savings, no support. She left with exactly what she came in with, herself and Hannah. Hannah refused to speak to me after the divorce. She sent one final message saying, "You ruined everything. I hope you're happy." But the truth was, Julia ruined everything, and Hannah chose to side with her. Months passed. I tried to rebuild my life. I redecorated the house, removed every trace of Julia's presence, and focused on finding myself again. Then, slowly, the fallout reached me. Julia's affair partner, the man she destroyed our marriage for, dumped her. He never wanted anything serious. She was just a fling to him. Hannah, meanwhile, found out her college fund was gone. She assumed I'd continue supporting her education, but I had dissolved the account during the divorce. I couldn't justify funding the future of someone who looked me in the eyes and told me my pain meant nothing. She was forced to take out loans, working long hours just to keep up with tuition. Word got back to me through mutual friends. She resented her mother for what happened. The two of them eventually moved in with Julia's parents. Julia, once proud and materialistic, had to swallow her pride and live in a cramped apartment, dependent on her elderly parents. Hannah, once ambitious and spoiled, now had to grind her way through school with no financial safety net. Nearly a year after the divorce, Hannah showed up at my door. She looked tired, older somehow. She didn't ask to come in, she just stood on the porch. I need money, she said flatly. Mom can't help, and I'm drowning in debt. You're the only one who can. I stared at her, trying to find the girl I once raised, the girl who used to call me dad, but all I saw was someone who had turned her back on me when I needed her most. I gave you everything for 12 years, I told her quietly. When I needed your support. You chose her. You made your choice. Now live with it. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't waver. She turned and walked away without another word. That was the last time I saw her. Today, I live alone in the house I built, surrounded by peace instead of betrayal. Julia and Hannah are nothing but ghosts of my past. From what I hear, Julia spends most of her days bitter and broke, and Hannah is still struggling to stay afloat. Do I feel guilty? Number. I gave them everything, and in return, they treated my love like it was disposable. They thought I would forgive, that I would keep providing no matter what, but they underestimated me. In the end, I left them with nothing but regret, and I carried my dignity with me into a new life. After the divorce, I thought the worst was behind me. The papers were signed, the assets settled, and Julia was out of my house for good. I told myself that was the end of it, but I had underestimated how bitter and manipulative she could be when stripped of the comfort she once enjoyed. Julia began spinning her own version of events to our mutual friends and family. According to her, I was the villain, a cold, workaholic husband who ignored her needs, driving her into another man's arms. She painted herself as the victim of neglect, and she didn't stop there. She claimed I abandoned Hannah too, that I was so cruel. I refused to support my stepdaughter's education out of spite. Some people believed her. A few even reached out to me, accusing me of heartlessness. But those who truly knew me, who had watched me raise Hannah as my own, who had seen how much I invested in that family, they knew the truth. They knew Julia was rewriting history to avoid facing her own shame. The lies stung, but what cut deeper was hearing that Hannah was repeating them. My stepdaughter, the girl I tucked in at night, the one I taught how to drive, was telling people I had never really loved her. It felt like she was erasing 12 years of her own life. 6 months after the divorce, Julia showed up at my house unannounced. She looked worn down, her once polished appearance replaced by cheap clothes and tired eyes. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "We need to talk," she said, stepping inside before I could stop her. I let her speak, curious to see what she'd try this time. "You've made your point," she began. "You embarrassed me in court, took everything from me, but don't you think you've punished Hannah enough? She didn't do anything wrong. She's struggling because of you." I almost laughed. Hannah hadn't done anything wrong. She had looked me in the eye and told me my wife's betrayal meant nothing. She had chosen to stand with Julia, not me. I told her, "I won't bankroll people who spit on me when I'm down." Hannah made her choice. You both did. Julia's expression hardened. "One day, you're going to regret this. You're going to be old, alone, and she'll never forgive you." I showed her to the door. Better alone than betrayed. 2 years later, Hannah came back into the picture. She was older, more mature, and life had clearly taken its toll. She asked to meet me at a small cafe. Against my better judgment, I agreed. She sat across from me, fidgeting with her coffee cup. "I want to apologize," she said finally. "I was young. I didn't understand. I shouldn't have dismissed what Mom did. I shouldn't have treated you like you didn't matter." For a moment, I saw the little girl I once raised. My heart almost softened, almost. But then I remembered the countless nights I lay awake wondering how the two people I loved most could betray me so easily. "What do you want, Hannah?" I asked. She hesitated before admitting, "I'm behind on tuition again. I thought maybe you could help." There it was. The real reason. Not reconciliation. Not guilt. Just money. I pushed my chair back and stood. "You want forgiveness? You'll have to live without it. You want money? Go to your mother. I gave you my love once and you threw it back in my face. Don't ask me to give you anything else." Her eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "I thought you were better than this." I looked at her one last time. "No, Hannah, I thought you were," and I walked out, leaving her behind. Time passed, and word of Julia's downfall trickled back to me piece by piece. The man she had risked everything for, he had married someone else. Julia had burned every bridge in her desperation, and her reputation in town was ruined. She bounced between dead-end jobs, never able to regain the lifestyle she once enjoyed at my side. Hannah, burdened with debt, ended up dropping out of college. She moved back in with Julia, their relationship strained and bitter. Neighbors whispered that they fought constantly. Julia blaming Hannah for her failures, Hannah blaming Julia for destroying the only stable life she'd ever had. The family that once stood together to dismiss my pain now sat in ruins, devouring each other. Meanwhile, I found peace. I traveled. I reconnected with old friends. I rebuilt my life on my own terms, and every time I thought back to the moment Hannah told me, "It doesn't mean anything," I smiled. Because I knew that for her and Julia, it eventually meant everything. They lost everything. I kept my dignity. And in the end, that was the sweetest revenge.